North Carolina's Supreme Court race is getting a fast track to a federal court. Republican Jefferson Griffin is asking the state's court to throw out, wait for it, 60,000 ballots from the contest between he and Democratic Justice Allison Riggs, who is ahead by just 734 votes. Now, folks, this has been a long-running saga. The Democratic majority State Elections Board has already dismissed the bulk of Griffin's ballot protests due to a lack of sufficient evidence. There is no evidence of fraud or wrongdoing in this election. So we have Associate Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, Allison Riggs, to join us and talk about it. Welcome.
Justice Riggs, good morning to you. I promise that we will get to the specifics of their trying to throw these votes out, the model for election denialism that we could see coming out of your state. But first, help us understand the decisions that are likely to be before the North Carolina Supreme Court this year that make the stakes just so high.
Yeah, our court hears every imaginable kind of case. Importantly, after the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to punt gerrymandering to the states, after the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to punt reproductive freedom decisions to the states, state Supreme Courts have become even more important. And it's in part why these races are so hotly contested. But it was a bright spot for progressives across the country this year, our work to explain why it matters to have people who are interested in defending people's rights and freedoms rather than chipping away at them on our state Supreme Court benches.
ProPublica wrote this about the efforts by Griffin to challenge these results, noting that Republican Jefferson Griffin narrowly lost his race for a seat on the state Supreme Court. Now he's asking that 60,000 ballots be thrown out based on a theory that an election denier said amounted to voter suppression. This theory was too extreme for even self-described election deniers. What exactly is happening here? As Michael and I were talking in the break, I mean, it seems as though folks can't win outright, so then they claim fraud and try to steal an election via the courts. That's what it looks like from where we're sitting, but you're on the ground.
Well, Simone, thank you. That's why I'm here today. I won my race. It was a tight race, but I won it. It's been confirmed by two separate recounts. I won by 734 votes. And now we're engaged in this protracted litigation about for my opponent, the only way he can try to engineer an outcome is by throwing away ballots. And I feel compelled because I put my hand on a Bible and swore a solemn oath to uphold the rights of North Carolinians, to defend the state and federal constitutions. I feel honor-bound to make sure that your viewers know that these 60,000 people are real. They did nothing wrong. They are our neighbors, our friends. In my case, they are my parents. They gave everything that was asked of them to election officials when they registered. Many of them have been voting for decades. They include Republican and Democratic local elected officials, just an incredible number of people who still day to day are learning that my opponent wants to throw out their ballot. And most troublingly is that there's another 6,000 votes of uniformed and overseas voters whose vote he wants to throw out because they complied with the rules as told to them before the election. It should be troubling to everyone, the idea of changing the rules after the game is over. I mean, if anyone read Calvin and Hobbes, it sort of reeks of Calvin ball rules. But our democracy depends on the rule of law, respect for institutions like the courts, and respect for decisions that voters make, even if you don't like them. And so the idea, it's important to me that people understand that what's happening here in North Carolina, we cannot become inured to it. We cannot just say, oh, this is the new norm, because our democracy cannot function in a healthy way if we let our guard down.
Justice Riggs, what's I guess the reality of this getting to the federal courts and the expectation once it gets there My sense would be that because this is a statewide elections race, it's a local, in that terms, local race. Where does the federal court come down here in terms of these 60,000 ballots that were, as you noted, not only went through the electoral process once, but twice, each time confirming your election by 734 votes?
Well, I will be in federal court for the next 2 weeks as a party, not a judge, which is an unfortunate circumstance to be in, but I will be a party defending my win and the right of those 60,000, actually closer to 70,000 voters to have their votes counted. There are questions of federal law, the Help America Vote Act, the UOCAVA, the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Voting Act, that the federal court will be grappling with. And as of right now, if my opponent doesn't receive an injunction or a stay, my certificate of election is set to issue on January 10th. And my hope is that more impacted voters in North Carolina will speak up and speak out against this. But the federal court, some of these arguments, legal arguments, have already been rejected by federal courts and state courts already. So these zombie legal arguments risen from the dead, certainly my position in court is that this is it's a legally erroneous position, and until I have the certificate of election, I'm a candidate who is compelled to keep my voters updated, keep all voters updated, and make sure that every vote counts.